All right, I'm taking a look at the Roland Juno-60, which I believe originally was made in 1982. It was the second in the series of Roland polyphonic synthesizers from that time that really became classics. The Juno-6, the Juno-60, and then the Juno-106. The 106 and the 60 I think are the ones you see the most on stage. They're laid out pretty much the same, but they do have pretty different sounds. It's a 6-voice polyphonic synth, which means you can play 6 notes. The setup is fairly simple. You can add in a sub-oscillator to that. There's noise, a high-pass filter, low-pass filter controls, an envelope, an arpeggiator. So you were a little bit limited in design. So in this one, I had installed an update to give it some more features. In some ways, kind of bring it in the realm of the 106 as far as MIDI control. Juno-60 was made pre-MIDI, so there was no real way to send it information from different keyboards or sequencers or other things. So with MIDI, you're able to do a lot of interesting things. This retrofit also adds a CPU that adds a lot of extra features, and I'm going to go through a few of those. So the very first one really has to do with how the oscillators are played. So instead of playing all 6 separately, there are ways to switch into modes where you're playing all 6 oscillators stacked on one note, or have 2 notes available, so it's stacking 3 oscillators on 2 notes. Oop, I'm in the wrong thing. So I can't play any more than 2 notes in this mode. It'll steal the voice from the last one, but you can play 2 and get this really nice sound. So I am using this MIDI controller to change some of the sounds. I have it programmed up. You can do these changes with key commands on the Juno, but I find this makes it a lot easier. So control over the cutoff. And what I was just doing was something they call fatness, which is in monophonic or duophonic mode. You're actually detuning the oscillators against each other. So that's a really nice sound, I think. In polyphonic mode, you can also detune the oscillators. And that offers some really cool possibilities if you're using envelopes generated in MIDI. So I'll start off by just first sending it a sequence of some chords that doesn't have anything detuned. So it's a nice sound as it is, but now I'm going to apply a very quick detune to the beginning of each chord. So it would be like me doing this, but with a lot more control since it's written into envelopes that are playing over MIDI. So that's a really quick detune into being in tune. And here's the same idea with just an LFO running. So I have just drawn in a pretty drastic half note LFO triangle wave. So I'll start to dial that down a little bit to get into something more musical. One of the other features is a lot of separate controls over the filter. So on the Juno-60 and all the Junos, you only have one envelope, and it can be applied to the VCA and the filter. But typically, it's really nice for most synths to have separate envelope control over both the VCA and the filter. So this upgrade allows you to do that. So if I turn the filter all the way down, and the envelope to the filter all the way down, it'll be filtered so low you won't hear anything. If I start to bring it up. So essentially what the envelope is doing is moving this knob really quickly in a pattern that's defined by 4 stages: attack, decay, sustain, release. So I'll turn it all the way up, and these are my ADSR controls for the filter. I'll start with the envelope amount completely down, and with an envelope that pretty much matches this envelope. So this is pretty standard functionality, but now if I slow down the attack stage, you can hear that fading in, and that's the filter sweeping up following that envelope. So if I shorten down the release, when I let go, you get a pretty quick release of that filter. Or if I make DNS pretty short, you'll get a really quick envelope. Okay, the last thing I want to look at is the really nice option of looping the filter ADSR. Now, this is something you didn't really see on older East Coast style synths like Moogs. It was more of a feature of Buchla stuff, kind of West Coast looping envelopes. But in recent years, newer Moog designs have incorporated this feature, and it can lead to some really nice stuff. So as soon as the ADSR, the last stage, the R stage ends, the envelope, if you have it on loop function, the envelope will just keep looping. So I'm going to play back some longer chords. I'm going to turn on the loop function and manipulate the ADSR a bit to kind of show how you can generate these sort of interesting, more complex sort of LFOs to apply to the filter using the looping ADSR. So I'm going to filter it down and apply the filter with the envelope here. Here's turning the loop on. So if you turn up any stage, you're going to get a longer overall envelope, which will mean it doesn't repeat as quick. So like if I turn up the release, if you start to go shorter, you'll get it looping quicker. So a really nice addition, especially leads to some really kind of organic sounding evolution of the filter, as opposed to just a straight LFO sound. One of the other interesting features is the added functionality of the Arpeggiator. Normally, the Juno-60 just runs on an internal clock controlled by this slider. That's still available, but you've got two other functions. One that'll sync it with a MIDI clock. So if we switch up here, currently this is the clock divider that turned down. Here, synced on 16th notes with the clock I have running in Ableton. And as I showed, you can subdivide that in different ways. It's kind of coarse on this MIDI, so I think I should just write a max program to kind of get it in a slightly better range. But obviously these super slow ones are not that useful. And the other interesting feature is switching over to this mode that uses a MIDI note as a trigger for the clock. So you don't have to just run a regular arpeggio at like 16th notes. It can be whatever pattern you program in, just using the 0 note, which is C-2, or the lowest note on your piano roll if you're using something like that. So I'm going to play a pattern that I have in a clip in Ableton and use that to play the arpeggiator. I'll do it with a beat playing so you can get a sense of what the pattern is.